It's time for a Toledo Polka history lesson with a band I've tried to get on this show for the last 2 years. That's right, let's learn about Toledo Polka Motion right now.
So tell me how you got started, like where you grew up and how that worked.
Great story. So I grew up on Oakland and LaGrange at St. Adalbert's in the old Polish neighborhood. I got my start playing drums in a polka band, thank you to my mother. And the story is this is my story and I'm sticking to it. So when I was about 13 years old, I decided I wanted to play drums. She had always been wanting me to, do drums, bought me little kits and stuff, toy kits and what have you. And so I went in, I said, Mom, I want to take some drum lessons. And so she's like, I'll get you set up. I know somebody that can teach you and I'll get that set up for you. So in my mind, I'm thinking Aerosmith, Boston, that's what I want to do, Bob Seger. And so I get in the car with my mom in the afternoon after school and take a drive down LaGrange Street, and she pulls up in front of Joseph's Accordion School. And I'm like, accordion school? I want to play drums. She's like, well, he teaches drums too. Anyways, so we sat down and he's like, so you want to play drums? What do you want to learn? I said, I want to play Bob Seger, I want to rock and roll. And he's like, well, that's great, son, but we're going to start out with a nice waltz. And it's a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And he starts playing his accordion and I'm, following along. And, as I spent time with him, he introduced me to other kids that were my age. Some I knew from the neighborhood, some were not from the neighborhood that, played various instruments, whether it was accordion, trumpet, what have you. And he used to put together little bands to do events and stuff like that. And I got kind of involved in it that way. I joined up with a group called the Golden Eagles. Dale Zielinski was the leader of that group. And I was 14 years old, so I got into a real working polka band at 14 and started playing, some of the clubs and the church festivals and things like that. And really what hooked me on the music at 16 years old, I took a trip out to Seven Springs over the 4th of July, and every year they would have a 6-day polka festival. And I went out there, and from that moment on I was hooked. There was like 30 different bands and jam sessions all over the place, 3,000 people a day attending the event. And from that point forward I was hooked. So I was a senior in high school, and Frankie Dromchek, he's the drummer now with Polka Floyd, approached me and said, hey, would you be interested in joining up with the Holy Toledo Polka Stars? And we're going to need a bass player, and if you can learn how to play bass, by June, we got a spot for you in the band. And so I worked with one of the other guys in the band, Randy Krajewski, and in 3.5, 4 months time frame learned enough how to play bass guitar to play, all the material in Holy Toledo's book, and went on the road with them. That would have been the summer of '81. So from that point, we toured all over the U.S. Holy Toledo, the group was very popular. Barb Zielinski was the featured vocalist and leader of the band, and had won some awards for Female Vocalist of the Year and what have you. And so for a couple of years, we did that, and in January of '83, Barb decided that she was going to disband Holy Toledo, and we were all sitting there going, what are we going to do? Well, 2 of the guys didn't want to play, 4 of us did, and so at the time it was Frankie Dromchek, myself, Mike Tolinsky, and Eddie Biegai, and we just said, you know what, let's start our own group. And so we did, and that was the formation of Toledo Polka Motion. We debuted in April 10th, 1983. I actually did a live radio show with Chet Zablocki on the Polka Party on WTOD at the time, and that was our first gig. And we hit the road and started playing throughout the country. Recorded a 45 in 1984. Then did a full studio album. Released that, and the band started gaining popularity, and we started traveling more. And at that time, we were maybe working 70, 80 gigs a year. Went through some changes in the group through the 80s and really kind of hit it big, as I would say, in our industry around 1989. We came out with a recording called TGIF. It was on Wham Records, which was a nationally known polka label. We had recorded at Peppermint Studios in Youngstown, Ohio, and that album produced Song of the Year. And we also received Band of the Year from the United States Polka Association. So that kind of kicked us off with a lot of momentum. We followed that recording with another recording on the same label called Grand Illusion. And that actually was the recording that was nominated for a Grammy for the 1990. Won all of the major polka awards, Song of the Year, Album of the Year, Band of the Year. Eddie received Vocalist of the Year. I mean, that kind of kicked us off. And, other than the trip to the Grammys, which, is a dream of a lifetime for any musician, the movie that we did in 2000, filmed in 2001, was called Welcome to Collinwood. It was featured several name actors: William H. Macy, George Clooney, Sam Rockwell. It was produced by the Russo brothers. Their claim to fame now is, Avengers and the Captain America movies. And, in the basis of the story, Collinwood was an ethnic neighborhood on the east side or west side of Cleveland. Anyways, their concept was they wanted to incorporate a lot of Cleveland into the basis of the movie, around the movie story. So they wanted to have a polka band. So another ironic story, just right place, right time. They were scouting an event that had a couple of polka bands playing. They were at the bar. A friend of mine was at the bar and said, "Hey, who are you guys?" So it ended up being Joe and Anthony Russo. Talked to my buddy and said, "Yeah, we're looking for a polka band for a movie." And he's like, "Oh, I got a great band for you." And he's like, "Who's that?" It's Toledo Polka Motion. So, well, how can I hear them? And my buddy John said, "Well, let me run out to the car. I got one of their CDs." The next day they called me. I negotiated with them and with Warner Brothers, the whole thing. The filming took place in Cleveland, a couple spots in the Tremont area, and then we were able and fortunate enough to be a part of the premiere, the world premiere, which they debuted it in Cannes. So we got to go out to the Cannes Film Festival and spend 3 days out there for that. And then they did a premiere in Cleveland, downtown Cleveland, and when they had the premiere party, they actually had us perform at it we did like about a half an hour set at the event. And from there we flew out to LA and did the red carpet and all that, and the parties in the bars that if you're just walking down the street, you wouldn't even know it's a bar because there's no old style sign hanging out or anything. It was a lot of fun, and would love to have the chance to do that again, as well as go to the Grammys, of course. All right, so in the Welcome to Collinwood movie, in addition to being in the scene, we were able to get 2 of our songs on the soundtrack in the movie, with full movie credits and what have you. So we had 2 original tunes that were written by Jeff Malechko. He was one of our horn players and lead singer at the time. My favorite part, from that experience from a music perspective, when we went to the premieres, Mark Mothersbaugh did the score for the majority of the movie. So got to spend a couple of days hanging out with him. For those that don't know Mark Mothersbaugh, that's Devo, right? And it was just really cool to share musical ideas and just kind of talk about what he did with Devo compared to what he was doing with doing the scores for TV and for movies. At that point we decided we want to try and do this as a career, and we went from playing 80 to 100 gigs a year up to about 200 or so gigs, traveling all across the country. leave on Tuesday night, get home Monday morning, leave on Wednesday night, get home Tuesday morning, that type of thing. And we're on the road quite heavy and had a lot of success. I mean, TPM over the years had a couple iterations of the band, as happens with a lot of musical groups. Guys come and go and, they do their own thing and what have you. And we were able to sustain the band until I decided in 2004 to retire from playing at the time. It just was a fantastic experience, once in a lifetime. Wouldn't trade it for anything.